Today we're going to be talking about the Banshee chapter. This is a dollar video. Macabre by XL Rator. This is the first DVD I've ever found that showed this on the little cover. I've not too much information on what they are, they just seem to be a distribution label. The case does tell me that this is low budget, that this is very indie, very indie. All it says is XL Rator here, BansheeChapter.com. I believe this is a 2013-2012 based film, maybe even 2011. It's a bit while ago. And there's a lot that this film takes in common with another work by H.P. Lovecraft called From Beyond. Now, there was a movie in the 80s, also called From Beyond, adapting Lovecraft's work. And that 80s movie holds up today expertly. This doesn't really have the budget to try to do that, though it's not trying to remake From Beyond, though it's adapting it in a little bit of a creative way. Now, this is very indie, The effects are low budget, very low budget. They try to hide the budget through a lot of creative methods. Shadows passing over a window outside, reusing sets, spending a lot of time in the same sets. There's a lot of talking in between characters so as to keep you grounded in certain areas so that there's not too much moving around that you have to do. This little thing here, this face here, that you don't really see it, but you see all the stuff in the face. That's pretty good artwork. The only actor I recognized in this film was Ted Levine. I believe he gets top billing, though he is not the main character. The synopsis to the plot is the U.S. government's ultimate experiment in terror. It's based off a real thing here. On the trail of a missing friend who had been experimenting with mind-altering drugs, DM and DMT-19, I believe, aided by a rogue counterculture writer, Ted Levine finds herself drawn into the dangerous world of top-secret government chemical research and the mystery of a disturbing radio signal of unknown origin. A fast-paced thriller, belay that, blending fact and fiction, that's true. Banshee chapter is based on real documents, actual test subject testimony, and uncovered secrets about covert programs run by the CIA. Right away, let's talk about the real things that it's based off of. It's based off a project called MK Ultra, which was a sort of human experimentation program undertaken allegedly by the Central Intelligence Agency. It began in the 50s and was probably stopped in the 70s or something like that. It lasted for a while. They did all sorts of spooky, creepy stuff with the peoples, and there's a lot of stuff that blurred the lines between what was humane and what was a little bit not. There was a lot of stuff that they did using psychoactive drugs, chemicals, electroshocks. They did a lot of torturous things. Let's just keep it like that. There's a bunch of project titles and all that stuff if you'd like to look this up. But for the sake of this film, they're just using the psychoactive drug for a portion of this experimentation program. But if you're interested in rabbit-holing into the Project MK Ultra, you go right ahead. I am not. Now, the story. Well, I told you the synopsis. The story is not gripping to me. It wasn't super gripping. Maybe it's the fact that the sound quality wasn't the best for me. I had to turn the volume up a fair bit just to pick up what people were saying, and that's probably the film's budget showing. This film was shot, you believe, digital video and the bulk of it, 95 to 100% of the film, was shot handheld. They were using handheld cameras instead of stationary cameras. They didn't really use too many lenses or lens effects and all that stuff. Sound effects were pretty basic. The background music was pretty basic. The budget showed, alright? The interesting thing that I liked about this film was the background stuff, though. One of the producers on this film, is allegedly Zachary Quinto. If you don't know who Zachary Quinto is, he plays Spock in the remake Star Trek movies. And for an even deeper rabbit hole guide, for those of you who used to watch television on cable back in the 2000s, on the TV show Heroes, he played Siler, one of the antagonists. He was excellent in it. I think Zachary Quinto is an excellent actor. And I believe he founded or started up a production company. I don't believe it's on the back here anywhere. If it is, yes, it's right here. You can't see it. I'll read it to you. Before the Door Pictures, Zachary Quinto founded that with a couple of his buddies from film school. Before the Door Pictures, they made they produced a few films, not too many of them, but this is one of them. So that's interesting to me. I wonder more about it with the distribution label of Accelerator. I wonder what more movies by this they were doing. I bet they're all mostly indie films. Yeah, but let's try to talk about the story. I kept getting sidetracked by behind-the-scenes stuff because that sounds more interesting. The Project MK Ultra is more interesting than the Project MK Ultra you see in here, though the implied story is interesting. While the story you see in the film isn't as interesting, the implications, the implied story, the stuff that's happening in the background, the stuff that makes you think, is pretty interesting. Now, what do I mean by that? Let's see if I can try to sum this up. So, Anne and the counterculture guy, played by Ted Levine, they go off on an adventure trying to find their lost friend, Callie, and this other guy, James, who is Anne's maybe boyfriend. I think the story says that they're together in some way, shape, or form. And as they're going off on this, they learn that this DMT drug, psychoactive drug, does something to the brain that allows a certain radio signal to interfere with something in their head that allows something from the other side to get in through these radio waves that have opened up the person's brain through the use of this psychoactive drugs, so that a creature from the other side can possess you, basically. If that doesn't really make sense, it'll probably make sense if you watch the film. They do bring up From Beyond, the book, the story by Lovecraft, because the character Ted Levine plays mentions the story to Anne, the main character. He mentions the story of From Beyond and says that that type of story is what inspired the government to do the psychoactive stuff with the DMT stuff, which basically is instructions from this otherworldly entity, and they make the drug with it so that they could have a beacon for them to possess the people. Through the base chemical, these scientists were adding harvested material from a Project Zero, shall we call it. And this Project Zero is holed up in an HQ bunker. These characters have to go into the bunker and find Project Zero and basically blow it up. They have to blow up the bunker, they have to blow up Project Zero to stop this radio station or whatever, but even though they blow up Project Zero, they fail to stop the radio signal, so to speak, and it continues to play, allowing these creatures from the other side to possess people. So, yeah. That's about as much as I feel like saying about the Banshee chapter. Is it worth your viewing it? Let's see how I can do my own little rating system. Obviously, you can't see it in theaters, and I wouldn't say you should. So if it was in theaters, I would say don't go to theaters to see it. It would not be a full price. It would not be the matinee discount price. But I would say if you find it for $1 at a dollar store, it's worth that price. If you find it on streaming that you're already paying for, it's worth that. Especially, definitely that. It's worth that more than the dollar bin. It's an interesting concept, but I would say that the 80s From Beyond film is more interesting. This is more a bridge between H.P. Lovecraft's From Beyond combined with the real Project MK Ultra that did happen. So, it's two interesting concepts that the film is using. The film itself isn't exactly very interesting, but the two things, the From Beyond story and Project MK Ultra, are. So you could either watch From Beyond, the 80s film, and read the story, and not watch this at all, and you could look up Project MK Ultra on your own and not watch this at all, and you would get everything that I think is interesting in this film without having to watch it. But honestly, if you're die-hard curious, go find it. It might be on Tubi. Anyways, be imaginative.